Hello everyone, my name is Ian Schaefer. I'm one of the Senior Product Specialists here at UDA Technologies, and joining me in the room today we have Holly Gibson. She's another of our Senior Product Specialists, and the two of us today will be taking you guys through some of these great features available in Construction Online, focusing on estimating, change orders, selections, QuickBooks integration. Today I think we're going to focus on QuickBooks Online integration specifically. And of course, as always, we'd love to take the time to field a lot of questions that you guys have. And it looks like we already have a great stream of questions coming through. Now along those lines too, our colleague Sydney Dorsey is actually going to be fielding a lot of those questions and flagging some of them for us to cover in the presentation today. So make sure you find that questions panel. We're going to be paying a lot of attention to that too, to make sure that we can field all of your questions. Now, as we dive in, again, today we're focusing on boosting your bottom line with some of the advanced estimating features in Construction Online. We're going to be taking a look specifically at some of the newer features and the content that's available in the new Construction Online interface. So if this looks a little different than you guys are accustomed to, great. that means we're going to be showing you guys a little bit of a sneak peek at some of the new features that are coming out with the new Construction Online interface as well. Of course, we've been working in it for a while now, and I've got to say, I love every aspect of these changes. And there's always so many great small quality of life adjustments that we're making in here too, like you'll see me using this constantly. There's a right-click menu that you can access almost everywhere. And we've got a ton of these kind of features. Holly, you were going over the list with us the other day. How many improvements did you say that we had with the new Construction Online?
Oh gosh, thousands. I think so many really that we've lost count of how many enhancements we've brought to Construction Online 2019, and hundreds of major enhancements. You know, these are both large and small changes, and you know, Ian, like you mentioned, some of these are going to be big new features, like we'll see today with the QuickBooks Online integration and the way that works now in Construction Online 2019. Some of those are going to be smaller changes but have such a big impact on how you're using and interacting with Construction Online on a day-to-day basis. I think one of the things that I'm excited to show you guys are some of the customization options that we built into estimating for Construction Online 2019, including the ability to just choose which columns are going to show or resize those. So pretty small in terms of changes, but huge in terms of impact and just how easy it is to use the system. I think, you know, Ian, you and I were speaking in preparation for this webinar, and one thing that we definitely agree on in our years of working with clients at UDA is that estimating and financial management is just so fundamental. I mean, it really is something that everyone has to do well. All successful projects are going to start with a great estimate or budget and be managed well from a financial standpoint. So I'm excited to go through what we can do in Construction Online for estimating and managing those change orders and making sure that you're ending these jobs profitably, and show off some of the new tools that we've added for 2019 to really make that even easier for you.
Absolutely. And again, these changes that we're going to be focusing on today, some of them will be large, big scale, huge changes that we're making in some places. Some of them, Holly, I think you called them small. I prefer to think of them as subtle, because again, I've been working for UDA for almost 10 years now, and I see a lot of common behavior through all the training sessions that I've done and demonstrations. People tend to use the computer in certain ways. Again, for me, I right-click on things, and the old right-click menu through the browser used to be very bland. It didn't really do much, and if you've seen this before, for me this was a huge impact, because now when you come into and you start right-clicking on some of the features that we're going through and taking a look at today, you can actually use those. You can do things with the right-click menu, and again, I consider this hugely impactful. It was a small change, a subtle thing.
Big impact.
Oh, it's made my life so much easier as a result. At least on the training and the demonstration front. Now, along those lines, just to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about today, of course, as we've mentioned a few times in the past, Construction Online and the UDA product family now caters to, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 650,000 users. And those projects that we're managing in Construction Online, or that are the primary users are managing in Construction Online cover somewhere in the neighborhood of about $75 billion worth of projects. And those projects all have some piece of an estimating component to them, be it, again, selections or the estimate itself or change orders. All of this information and all of all these financials live here in Construction Online, and with the company overview, you can do a great job of getting that 30,000 foot view or the bird's eye view as you're kind of walking through this. And it starts here. As you guys have seen in some of the webinars that we've done so far this week and last week, we have a lot of new, very informative, great dashboards available to you right here in the company overview. So any company owners or project managers, or basically anybody who needs to get a good idea of what's happening, you can come to recent and upcoming and see a lot of the major events that are happening or due to happen here in the very near future. And from this company overview on the left-hand side, you can dive into your financials. From the Estimating tab, it takes you directly into your contract summaries for all of your live projects in Construction Online. From here, you can also get a quick peek at your budget versus actuals or estimate versus actuals for a lot of these jobs as well. Again, these are high-level views, so we're not getting too granular as we're looking at this. Again, we're seeing all of these big pieces kind of fitting together for all of our projects so that we're getting a pulse for the company as a whole right here from the financial section. We can also get into paid versus remaining here as well. Again, as we're looking through these numbers, there's a lot of information that we need to keep track of to make sure that we're collecting on everything that we are owed. And this is the easiest place to go into and see that the information is coming together as it should. So again, as you're looking through these, the financial tab shows you a lot of this information. We've also added something that I've loved in ConstructionSuite, the desktop solution, for years. There's a place where you can dive right into the recent estimates here as well. So we're kind of building upon these ideas of quick access and ready access for a lot of the information that you're working on. Even now that Construction Online is a little bit more project-centric, you can still get right back into where you left off. Everybody has these tools and these functions and features available to them as well. This is not only available to you for the estimates, for the big items. You can also start to drill into some of the overviews or the dashboard elements for selections and change orders here as well. Under selections, this dashboard does a great job of making sure that the selections are happening on time. The last thing that we want as we're building any of these projects, especially the residential projects, is to hit delays because the customer hasn't made up their mind yet, or because they don't know they had to make up their mind. This helps everybody keep on track with the selections, and again, it pools all this information together from all of the jobs. I have a short list right now of favorite projects that I'm tracking, but if we've got 5 or 6 different collections of jobs or subdivisions that we might be working on, or office spaces, whatever it may be, this would do an excellent job of pulling together all of this information so that my attention, which is prone to drift as is best used or focused on all of the information that requires my attention as we're working on this. And you guys can take advantage of this too, both for client selections and change orders for that matter. As we come in and take a look at this, again, dashboard elements showing us overall for what we're working on. And in this case, with change orders, we're also tracking added time and cost as well, since the impact of some change orders on jobs isn't always financial. Sometimes it's an investment of time or an adjustment, or maybe even just documenting paperwork. Maybe paint colors changed or something like that. But all of these changes and adjustments are going to be available to you here with a quick list available down on the bottom left-hand corner of this view so that you can see the information that's being presented, the discussions that are happening about potential changes to these jobs as well. All of this information gets collected together at a high level under the company overview, at a more granular level or detailed when we dive into the projects. Now, before we actually go there, there's one more section that's very new for Construction Online that I want to touch on, because it changes how most of our users are going to be thinking about these jobs as they're coming in. You'll actually find this under Sales Management, where the lead tracking tools that we've always had available on Construction Online have a new home here. But what you'll find here that is a change in how we've operated is a new section here for opportunities. Now, Construction Online has a wide variety of information that we gather together for live projects, but not all of the estimates that you see in Construction Online have to be a part of a project yet. Some of those we're going to be estimating or bidding, hoping to win these potential projects in the future. And again, these all exist here under opportunities now, where you can go into and start putting together the details for the projects. But most importantly, these just give you a home for where to keep that estimate as you guys are trying to win these jobs or negotiate projects or perhaps whatever else might be included in from there. So again, as you're looking through all of this information, we now have a place for leads and opportunities. This has actually been a high demand feature for a lot of our builders who do like remodeling projects or something like that as well, because most of them, or most of us, have a lot of repeat customers. And repeat customers don't necessarily need to go through the lead pipeline multiple times. In most cases, I just need a place to keep all of the information for the new job. Like in this case, Holly, we've partnered with organizations like Remodelers Advantage at length as well. Do you happen to remember any of the percentages that they provide for repeat customers over new leads?
Oh gosh, I don't remember the exact percentage, but I remember it being very, very high, somewhere in the range of maybe a 40% or 45%, where you're really looking at, especially with certain industries, not just remodeling, but certain specialties where often you will do, and part of the business model is to do repeat business for the same customer. So a wealth of referrals to other clients are of course a great source of those leads and opportunities, but very often repeat business we see as something that's just such a great lead source for so many of you out there. And opportunities really give us a way to manage that well, in addition to really just managing the pre-sales process as a whole. In most cases, as you're working through the contacts in your lead pipeline, you're hopefully following up regularly, using Construction Online to see who you need to call, making sure that you're really out there making those opportunities happen for your company. You will reach a point where we don't have, of course, a signed contract yet. The job hasn't really been given the green light, but we do need to create an estimate. We need to begin to give the customer an understanding of what that contract or proposal would look like. We need to go ahead and create that in a way that we're not going to have to recreate it in the future. And so that's exactly what opportunities allow us to do here, is create an opportunity for a client. You will have access to a full estimate that you'll create for this opportunity, and it's identical to the estimate that you would have in your kind of live project for Construction Online. So when we create that new opportunity and create the estimate, once we mark that opportunity as closed won, the estimate automatically transfers to the project, so it's a seamless process. And you're only learning how to estimate in one tool. Of course, it's the exact same powerful tool you want on your project side, just in that pre-sales process for you.
That's right. And kind of drilling down into some of the details or the information for those opportunities. First, opportunities do have an overview screen that you can see here. Again, pulling in some of the conversation details or the quality or anything like that we might have. Files, of course, if we've got some additional documentation for this, we may have it show up. For the Ring residents, as an example, Stephen is interested in us just coming in and doing a whole home remodel. So this is where we might add the floor plans from his original home before we start to make any adjustments or design changes or anything like that. Now, of course, the important section for us today would be the Financials tab, where we would come into and start working with an estimate, either imported from Excel. I know a lot of us who are coming into a platform like this already have some form of Excel spreadsheet that we want to use. So if we're importing from one of these, we can actually choose the file here and import it. If you need to know what it looks like, by the way, there's an extremely convenient link to download the template to see what that looks like. Alternatively, you can either create it from scratch or preferably from an estimate template that you guys build as you work within Construction Online here. Now, of course, these estimates, as Holly mentioned, will carry into the live project once it's flagged as one. So if we come into the project and right-click on the job, you can edit the opportunity details here, or more importantly, convert it to a project directly. This actually adds it to your list down below, where we have, in my case, my project favorites, or the full list of projects as we expand these out down below. In our case today, we're going to actually start to drill down into some of the more detail here available on Lot 1 Creekwood Country Estates, which already has an estimate, and we can kind of take a look at making some of the changes and adjustments to it here. Now, Holly, you actually mentioned something earlier as well, and I would point this out to a lot of you as you're watching or viewing with us today in the webinar. A good estimate, a well kind of balanced or accurate estimate is great on the job itself, but I've always found the most valuable part of working with estimating in any way, shape, or form is seeing the adjustments or the costs as they come in so that you can perfect that estimate for the next one. It's all about the next project in my mind. So having all of this information come together on the views and everything is very, very important. And it all, for me, starts with knowing my baseline on that estimate, or what we might consider to be the base cost for what we're working on, or estimated value perhaps as well. Now, of course, within the project, on the main overview for the project itself, you'll get some of these big numbers. We've got an estimated dollar amount here, the balance for our change orders. This is going to be the selection, the net value for the selections. If everybody is picking exactly what the selection was allowed, or the allowance amounts, not that anybody has ever hit the numbers on the nose, but if anybody does stick to those numbers very, very closely, this might have an overall zero change, a net change from selections at $0. For me, though, a customer on this project is already a little over their allowances. That may also lead to some changes. Again, this is net change by approved change orders or accepted change orders. So if we've got 100 change orders and they're all pending, this would be 0. As the customer starts approving change orders, this number goes up. Now, all of this information you can see either by going to the Financials tab, or simply follow the link from this page and it'll actually take you directly into that section where you can start to get a better view for the job itself. I love having those quick links, and following those quick links from the project overview take you right to where you need to be. Now again, this is one of the new Construction Online estimates. I've already got mine connected to a QuickBooks Online account so we can start to see information transferring back and forth. But some of the more important pieces of information, first off, in the new Construction Online Estimating features here, start with the main views that Holly mentioned earlier. So as you're looking at the Construction Online Estimate, you've got a drop-down that includes 5 different default views within the platform, within Construction Online Estimating, and depending on what sort of information you're looking for, you can choose the one that fits you best. Now, she also mentioned, and I would point out in this case, that all of these views are just setting some predefined columns to be available to you. If you hover over these columns, of course, you can see that it gives you a brief description, or in the instance of base cost, a slightly larger than brief description for the purpose of the column. But what you'll also find here is the ability to right-click and show or hide additional columns. Now in this case, if you're showing and hiding additional columns, you'll see all the columns that are available to you here and can simply check the box next to any of the columns that you'd like to turn on for this view or add to this view. And this way, the next time you come into the view, it will give you that column as well. Now I love this option because this gives everybody the ability to kind of customize some of the information that's available in the estimate to fit what they need on that particular view. For me, as an example, on the budget view, I'm probably going to turn on some of the values like adjustments so that I can see where I originally estimated this line item for my estimate to be, and then any adjustments for things like buyout that I have when I'm finding a subcontractor to provide this information for me. So this tells me that I'm already padding my profit numbers a little bit because I'm saving money by adjusting my base cost to be, in this case, lower than I thought it was going to be. Again, the contract signed isn't going to change from these adjustments, but that money's coming in anyway.
That's right. Now, just like with what you'll see elsewhere in Construction Online, here you notice the right clicks that you have available to you, some of those personalization options. Notice one thing you didn't mention, Ian, but you did get to show off there, was that with your estimate, in order to really take advantage of the space that you have available when you're working in Construction Online, we did build a full screen view so that you can always go into that full screen mode, make that nice and large. So of course we want to keep our eye on the dashboards as we're building and working with our estimate, but sometimes you need to sit down and really enter some data, and that's where that full screen mode is so nice to really allow you to see the entire estimate sheet, give you a little more space to work with. And just like you'll notice with other tools that you'll work with throughout Construction Online, it does remember your settings. So of course when you come in and add maybe a column that you need to see the next time you come to that budget mode for your estimate or any of the other available views. It's going to remember what you've customized so that you're always really looking at information that's relevant to you. Another improvement that we've made in the estimate here is the ability for you to adjust not only the columns that are shown, but how large they are. So, notice with that description column, sometimes that could get a little lengthy. Maybe you want to expand that out. In some cases, maybe you only use it a little bit. We've got a pretty brief description here, so you can actually shrink that down. So you can resize these columns again based on some of the naming and information that you've set up to go in your estimate.
And these are great points too, because I've seen at this point with well over 500,000 clients, I have seen just about every setup or layout or organization for different estimates. The templates and the information stored within those varies greatly. So everybody has a slightly different need for everything that they're working on. And in this case, you can scale this to fit you and your company and how you guys like to estimate your projects. Again, with the full screen mode, I don't even think about it anymore. As Ollie pointed out, I just jump straight into it, because when we're looking at this, for me, it's important to get in or to pull all of this information and look at it together instead of focusing in on some of the other information available. We can always get back to it easily though. As you saw, we can collapse it back down again as needed. You also have the option in here, by the way, to collapse various different parts of the view as well, just in case you need a little bit more space, but you don't want to go with the big picture view right away. So again, you've got plenty of different scaling options in here available to you as well that really allow this estimating platform, even though it's web-based, it still gives you that ability to control the feel a little bit more, which of course will make for a better experience overall.
Exactly, a better and an easier experience overall. One of the things that I really love about ConstructionOnline Estimating is that it also does work for you. I feel like one of the things with Construction Online that we see again throughout the whole platform is that it really does start working for you from the first minute that you begin to use it. So you come into Construction Online, you'll start to add projects, you'll start to create estimates and other information, and immediately Construction Online begins to work for you by compiling and doing something with this information. So one example of that is when we see like our price by category breakdown over here on the side. So as we put together our estimate, it's going to give us a nice summary of how that breaks down, just a really quick inline report of how this is breaking down for each category or how this is going to break down by type. And you'll also notice that as you move to different views in your estimate, you'll get additional options will show up for you here. So as we move into views that would cover things like a more advanced estimate or perhaps even job costing, that'll come, a little bit down the road, you'll get additional breakdowns where here we see maybe by classification or resource to start to see how much money we have allocated in each of those areas.
And again, as we're working through all of this additional information, the views that we define do turn on some additional information for us here as well, like, again, columns or some of the additional depth and detail. Most of the information, though, that we're working with, in my case, is stemming from the templates that I use to create these, which allowed me to define the types of categories that I like to work in, my preferences in this case. Mm-hmm. Now, it's easy to read these estimates as well because we've kind of highlighted each of the category rows, the category sections here, like general requirements or foundation, framing. They're all collapsible as well. So as you're kind of working through this, as you finish one section and you're ready to move to the next, this is perfect. Collapse it down, move on to the next section, where you can start to expand upon it by adding additional subcategories. Or again, if we're working with some new scope that we haven't had in the estimates before, we can start to add in new categories of work here as well. Now, some of the additional information that you have in here is fairly standard for what I would consider the online estimating to require. Things like we've got all of the different categories and the sections that we're going to be estimating, where you could then put in the quantities that might be required for this. Unit costs, you can expand some of the information out here as well to include inline markups, either calculated as a dollar markup, or if you prefer, you could have it set as a percentage, perhaps, as you work through this information as well. You'll also have the ability to assign resources here and in the estimate, in addition to some of the other prices and such. This allows you to capture the bid process as you guys are working through this. As you award subcontractor bids, assign them here in the estimate. This allows everybody to kind of follow along with what you guys are working on. It'll also show you some of that additional information in the right sidebar where you can start to see costs by resource, which in my case would represent the subcontractor contract as well. So this is where I can see everything that I have in contract with various different subs or resources or what have you, even my own team perhaps. But we're adding in some additional options here as well. Let's go back up and full screen it again. Things on the left side, like a new stoplight system that's available within the estimates. This allows you to, once again, color code various different sections of the estimate itself as you work. It's been extremely impactful for some of the people who have early access to the ConstructionOnline Estimating, and hopefully for you guys as well. This, for me, has been an excellent way for me to go through and figure out if I've firmed up the pricing in these areas. If I'm confident with it, we can come into and flag or change the stoplight color to represent, green means go. Areas where I have some concerns about the prices, we might go in and flag them as yellow or red perhaps if I know that all the bids are coming in over budget. So again, in this case, as we're tracking, even with something as simple as the just 3 colors, green, yellow, and red, we start to convey a lot of amazing information extremely quickly just by having a little switch there that you guys can change.
Exactly. It's such a great collaborative tool. I love the stoplights. One of the things that I love seeing people use in construction online. It's available in both your estimates and your schedules, and it's always fun to see how different teams use it. But what I see is that it's always just a quick little reference to keep you on track with something. You're not really locked into using it a certain way, but it's such a fast, easy color coding kind of way to collaborate with other people on the estimate or keep yourself on track. Now, I do see a great question coming in from one of our clients about really, I think, the next column here, Ian. So we have a question coming in from Carolyn about whether how long we can keep that description, or if there's an internal note section for these items.
And actually, that's a great one. It's also been a good topic of discussion. Again, not just here today, but also among lots and lots of users. What we offer in ConstructionOnline Estimating now is a space where you can add quick descriptions. You can put in maybe a sentence or so for the information that you guys have available here. Some of this will show up in reports. Some of it will show up in like the QuickBooks integration. You'd have the same single item like design services, but the description might be unique every time you send it over for a new job. But if you've got a lot of information that we're going to be carrying through in this case, we also include another section over on the far left side for notes. Now this is where we can start to get very, well, if you guys are like me, maybe a little too wordy, but if you guys have a larger description that you'd like to include for any of these sections, you can come into and add that information here in the notes section. In fact, you can also expand upon it quite easily if you guys wanted to go into and use some of the additional information from a spec sheet perhaps that you guys received. It's a great place to go copy some of the spec for the line. You can paste it in here into the general notes or the team link notes perhaps if you want to share this with your subs. And again, all this information is going to be conveyed through here or through, again, several of the reports that we offer from the estimates as well.
Exactly. That's a great use for it because there is, of course, the ability to pull those into some of the reports and really just an outstanding notes report where anything that you're entering here. So, for example, if you were using this to house some of those specs, you can always come back, run a notes report that's going to take all of the notes that you've entered for these items, put it in a great report format for you, allow to filter that down by note type, and so you can really build some of those additional items that you might want to hand off to someone, just through using the notes tool here.
And you'll also find, by the way, not only is there a great space here for notes, be they general notes or team link notes or maybe some client comments in here that we want to keep track of, but you'll also get an expanded view from here as well if you needed to come into and take a better look or a closer look at some of the details for the section that we're reviewing.
That's
or
right.
Once again, resources as well. I bring this up because, of course, the screen size that we're working with today is, I would say this is a comfortable screen size, but I'm also doing a lot of work on a surface. Sometimes I'll take this with me to a job site or to a training session, or not next week, but the week after, we'll actually be at the International Builder Show in Las Vegas. The Surface, the Microsoft Surface, has a smaller screen size, and so going into or highlighting some of those additional details helps tremendously when you're working with something that's maybe a quarter this size, or something along those lines, where space is a premium. Expand out those subcategory details or the category details to get that additional information in there as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It performs really well on those types of devices, and the options that you see for expanding and collapsing sections or those full screen views are going to be super useful. Another thing I found when working on a device like that, and some people even prefer when working on, sort of their normal desktop, is the estimate toolbar. So it actually houses one of my very favorite new things that we've added for 2019, but it also gives you the ability to add things like, just inserting new categories or rows, or maybe making some edits. Now, all of this is, of course, touchscreen friendly. So on something like a Surface Pro, where you may not be doing a ton of right clicking, but do have that touchscreen capability, the options in this toolbar are really awesome.
Absolutely. And as you're working through this as well, it does give you some of the additional tools for, again, adjusting your views and things like that as well. I also love that it gives you quick access to some of the reports available in here as well. And of course, I would love to say everybody's favorite, but it's at least my favorite, when you can start to dive into some of the QuickBooks integration features here as well. So again, when space is a premium and you're working off of a touchscreen, here we have quick access to, or quick options to get some of that information quickly transferred over to QuickBooks as well. In my case, QuickBooks Online. So
That's
I can
right.
push the button, see the results, and in Construction Online, you can actually see a history for all this data exchange between the two platforms as well. Follow the link, and it takes you right into whatever is part of that
Whatever's
report in
referenced.
QuickBooks.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Now,
Go ahead.
well, before we jump too far away, one of the things that's my favorite, even though I do love the QuickBooks integration, it's phenomenal. But what I really enjoy is if you guys have done trainings with me or worked with me as you're getting started with Construction Online, and I know that Ian and Sydney recommend the same types of things, we really recommend that where possible you use templates. It speeds up your process. It helps keep you accurate. It helps keep you from forgetting things. I can't say enough about recommendation of templating out what you can. Now, what often comes with that, at least in my case, is that I have a really lengthy template that I use. It covers every possible option. So one of the things that we've added for 2019 is the ability for you to hide those empty sections. So that's going to be located here in your view menu. What you can do now with your template is, as you go through and fill that out, once you've reviewed everything, you're confident that you've really covered all of the bases, you can hide your empty sections so that any of those items on the template that maybe just did not apply to this particular job are going to essentially disappear. So you don't have to look at them. You can still really build that template out to be comprehensive, but you can use that show and hide for your empty sections to really give you the ability to lock that job in once you're done, get rid of what you don't need, and move on to your next few steps, which are normally going to be doing things like integrating with your QuickBooks, creating things like your proposal reports, and of course, once the job is actually won and in progress, moving on to different modes in your estimate, job costing, and looking at how you're doing on your budget there.
And you'll actually find a lot of these great options available in the top right corner of your estimate as well. Regardless of which view you're on, if you move all the way up here next to the collapse down button, there's also another button here that allows you to see some of these options, like the QuickBooks integration features, some of the reports that we're working with. We talk about your next step in this case, and the next step may be widely varied.
That's right.
But everybody needs a way to present these contracts, this information. And so two of the key buttons that I see used very often in the reports are here for creating a proposal or a contract summary report. Each of these does a fantastic job of pulling valuable information out of the estimate, but making it presentable and readable to people who maybe don't look at this kind of information every day. So if you're coming into and taking a look at this information and you're using some of these options, the estimate proposal, as an example, gives you the ability to come into and define a scope of work or pull that in from the project itself. You can choose what level of detail you want to include, whether or not descriptions will be included here as well. You can use some of the additional information in here as well to choose how detailed you want that price tag to be. For me personally, I prefer a very top level for the price, but depth for my detail for the description of how much information we're going to show. So I like to include all the levels, but keep the total at a contract level. One big number, plenty of words to describe the work that we're doing. In this way, I don't ever engage in those conversations where somebody says, well, this other builder said that they could do this one tiny section for cheaper, even though they were way off for everything else. I don't want to entertain that discussion, so I have the flexibility to come in here and define how this proposal will be created so that I can control that conversation in a much better way, leading it in a direction that I want to go in that conversation with my customer. Now, interestingly enough, you'll also find some interesting details, lots of interesting things here apparently. You'll find some great detail in the proposal as well for using some of the things like classification totals. Now, as we saw in that right sidebar, some of the information available here is going to be broken down by classification, and we actually have icons for this estimate view. This is a standard estimate. If you prefer a 5-column estimate, then you'll have columns for each of these major classifications. A material column, a labor column, a subcontractor column. You could just plug in the dollar amounts per line item, and this way you could have the foundation, for example, site work, you might have equipment and labor that's included in that. You can put both of those costs in and separate them out accordingly. Regardless of how you choose to organize the estimate, this option allows you to just provide lump sum totals down at the bottom by classification, which again may help or contribute to that presentation process that you're working with your customers. More importantly, if you guys are working on quick time and material jobs, this is an excellent way to just give them a rough idea on how that breakdown or the percentages might look on that type of project. It might be something like a 50-50 split between material costs and labor costs, and this would give your customer a better idea if they try to make broad changes to the material requirements for a T&M job. They'll know that this has a huge impact on that contract because materials is a big part of that contract. So again, small little options in here that have huge impacts because of the information that they can convey, and it's all right here.
That's exactly right. Now, one of the most common questions that I get when we're looking at creating estimates in Construction Online is when we look at all the ways and really excellent ways that Construction Online Estimating covers your company's profit, your overhead and margin, ensuring that you've got a great margin built into that project. One of the most common questions I get though is, will my client see that? Or what happens now if I want to show this to a client? I mean, what do we do with that number? So we do have a great option built in here for your overhead and margin that allows you to either list it as a separate line item. So, depending on the contract you have, you may want to have that listed. That may be something that you've outlined very clearly with your client, what your rate is. Or for many of those fixed fee jobs, you're really going to want to prorate that throughout the contract. So this allows you to still track separately that company overhead and margin number, really track your profit well. But when we're ready to display that to a client, prorate that throughout the categories. Essentially, it will disappear into the totals that you're listing.
Absolutely. And again, as you guys are working through this, the system will remember a lot of these options. So as you guys are looking at this collection of views and you find the set that works, it's very easy to come back in and recreate that detail or that depth. More importantly, once these reports are generated, as we took a look on Monday, I believe it was Monday when we were going into document management.
Yes.
You'll have the ability to generate these reports, these PDFs, and even edit them once they've been generated. Now, the question will probably come up in a moment, so I'll go ahead and jump out in front of this one now. These changes that you make to the report are not going to be reflected back in the estimate. You would still need to go into and update the estimate as an aside, but it does give you some excellent options to go into and maybe round up the contract amount to a whole dollar figure. I personally like presenting it that way because if the customer is looking at a price tag that's $500,000 or $1 million and 17 cents, come on, 17 cents. But still, that might be part of the accurate estimate. We might need to go into and change the contract amount, though, just a little bit of the proposal amount to make it a little bit more palatable in that case. So this just gives you an easy way to go into and edit that information, and then we can just save it from here back into the project as well. And that way, it's going to live exactly where we want, providing the detail exactly the way we want to provide that detail, and in my case, it'll give the customer a file to reference back to so that they don't feel the need to call me at 10 o'clock at night to remind them of what was involved in this contract. So again, that file sharing aspect is also going to be a huge burden lifted off of you guys as you work through this, because the information is always available at any time.
Yeah, that's right. Now, on the proposal front, one of the things that we have built into Construction Online for 2019, or one of the things that's new for 2019, is really the ease of access to that entire report section. Many of the reports that we'll see today, we have built for you. They've been there for a while. Some are new. We've actually added a new proposal option for 2019 as well. But one of the big differences with this new interface for 2019 is that they're all going to live in one place under your reports tab. So each section, your project tracking, your financials, your calendars, every section gets a reports area. So when you go into your financial reports, we're able to see a place to, of course, create that proposal. You're able to see all of the other reports that are available to you. So things like your notes report that we just talked about, or some of those job costing reports. We've also added a brand new simple estimate proposal option that you can use just as a quick proposal. So your standard estimate proposal is going to give you a lot of options to kind of choose and personalize. The simple estimate proposal is for those of you who say, you know what, I don't need to customize anything. I just want to click a button and have it print out what I just typed in the estimate, everything on different lines. That's what you do. You can choose the simple option. It's going to create exactly as you've typed things into the estimate, just list them out in a beautiful format, of course, but without all the extra options with your standard proposal.
I highly recommend everybody take a look at it as well, because again, it cuts down on the time spent making decisions on what to include and what not to. In this case, you can see it, and seeing in most cases will lead to a better decision, because now you've got a little bit more information on what to look at there too. Or again, if we're looking at quick jobs versus larger jobs, again, it looked like we have a lot of residential builders in here, and if you do residential and remodeling, and it's a simple remodeling job that you guys don't want to spend too much time on, the simple estimate proposal might be perfect. For those larger jobs, perhaps a custom home or something of that scale, we might shift gears into the estimate proposal, which allows for a little bit more detail. So again, I find that most companies will use both. There's going to be a right time and a right place for each one, and now we give you both options available to you guys here as well. That's right.
Now, the other component that really comes into play when you're initially creating your estimate, so if we kind of look at a timeline of how that contract is going to come together for you. You've of course got the estimate that you're building out. The other piece of that will come into play for many of you will be specific allowances, and those are going to be imported from your selection sheet, add on to the total of your estimate contract, so that when you print that proposal, you do have the option to have those allowance amounts just detailed out there at the bottom, so the client can see, okay, here's what we are, here's what we're estimating for, here's our budget, and then here are the things that we'll need you to choose and how much money we're really allocating for those. So of course we have great reports that you can do for those. And as you're putting it together initially, if you have the choices, great, but you really don't even have to have individual choices. All you really need is to come onto your selection sheet, add those categories, and then add those individual selections with an allowance, so that maybe if you're doing that for, appliances or a fixtures package or flooring, all of those are going to total up for you, come onto that final estimate, so that when you do create that proposal, all that's part of that same final number for you.
Now, along those lines too, in the Financials tab, of course, we have access to not only build the estimate itself, but this is also where we can go to and build out those client selections. Selections will have an impact on your estimate, but they're not on the estimate itself. When you're building those selections, this area gives you the ability to come into and create those major headings for the selections, generally provided in a way that your customer will understand, of course. So client selection categories, the choice itself or the selection would be your next deeper level, and then all of the different options that they have to pick from would be the next level still. So as you come through taking a look at these, for example, my kitchen category, or my kitchen appliances category lives at the top level. Underneath this, one of my selection subcategories would be the fridge. And then underneath this, I have the wrong selection in place here.
That's not a fridge. But I noticed that you do have a $4,000 allowance there. So you'll notice for that particular choice, we've given it an allowance of $4,000. And that is, of course, what's going to populate and add up on your estimate there.
Let's see if I've used the right words anywhere. Sink. Yes, this looks like a sink. Perhaps this might be a little bit more of a fitting description. But as you're working through these two, the beauty of what you find here with the client selection section is that you do define an allowance which the customer will understand. They'll know how much they're working within in their budget. And when you're looking at all the different options or choices that are available, again, don't pay any attention to that faucet. We're looking at the sinks here. The various different choices that they'll have to choose from would each have a value or an impact dollar amount. And, to Holly's point from earlier, you may have markups included on these choices that are available. Choice 1 and choice 2 may have that markup built in. In fact, I think that's the $231 here and the $400 there. When the customer looks at this, they just see that big blanket dollar amount, the $1,500 for this choice, $1,324.25 for that choice. And they can compare this to the allowance, and that's where the net comes into play. They're over or under budget. And, of course, depending on how you organize this information, again, it'll show up on the estimate proposal as the allowances portion, or the estimate reports there. You can also generate selection books or choice books from this as well. The reports from selections do a great job of breaking out not only the information here, but depending on which of the two you might choose, one will give you all the different choices that are available with pictures and depth of information that you guys have provided here. The other might be a perfect document or a perfect report to provide to your customer once the job is finished, because it only outlines the information that they chose. And giving them the detail and the models and the brands and the parts and any other information that's included for those at the end will lead to happier customers, because now maintenance is simple. I know exactly what appliance it is. I know exactly which parts are going to be included in that. And if I need to bring a repair person out there, I have everything that I need right here in this handy little binder.
That's right. Clients really love that selections book. I think it's one of the most popular financial reports that I see people use, just because it's so useful and it's such a polished sort of final touch for you to be able to hand that off to your client at the end of the job. Now, I know many of you will have selections that need to be approved before construction starts, or that you like to get done at the beginning of the job. Some of you space those out a little bit further throughout construction. But a couple of things that are usually always happening during construction, once we sort of move past the proposal stage, we have that signed contract, is we begin to have, of course, changes or change orders that we need to manage on the project. And we also really need to come in and do some job costing and keep our eyes on the budget. Now, change orders are made super simple in Construction Online, which hopefully will really encourage you guys to do them. I think, one of the things with change orders is just making sure that you get them done. I actually had a conversation with one of my customers this week who, had some questions about making some adjustments on an estimate, but it turns out when I asked why, he trying to correct something that he realized I really should have created a change order for this, and I didn't do it, and the client said they were good for it, but then every time I invoice the client, I'm getting $5,000 less because they want to hold back the amount that really should have been a change order. So help me document this. But the great thing is that really it's just so easy. Making a new change order is as simple as just filling out the form. But really the power that you get with that is tremendous.
Absolutely. And with all of the additional tools that are available with the Construction Online change orders, especially when you're taking a look at the mobile app, anytime that you work with like one of the touch screens and you do approve on behalf of the customer, maybe because you're on site with them trying to get them to sign off on it right now while they're thinking about it, it actually does prompt for a signature line as well. Most of this information, though, does need to be made available here. So when we're talking about filling out the change orders, of course, in this area, you can provide your change order names, the dollar amounts, the markups. All of this information is going to be available to them here. Try not to spend any attention to my... MOU, MOLD? You know what? Doesn't matter. You guys know what it is, I hope. But as you guys are working through and you're putting in the additional information, we'll move on to some of the additional details in here, like what type of change order is this? Well, this one's customer driven. Customer chose this, so I might come into and say that this is an owner change.
This is new for 2019 as well. So this is one of the enhancements that you'll find in new construction online for 2019 are some of these additional pieces of information that we can track. Yes, what type of change order is this? What's the reason for the change being requested? And that'll allow you to come back and really use this information later on to see, you know, kind of as a company or with your clients or maybe with a certain client, what's really driving those changes.
And you'll notice that the new Construction Online, I think we've touched on this a few times now, but the new Construction Online also includes these options to customize the information available in the dropdown. So from here, if you click on the option, you can change the values that are provided to, again, help it fit your company and your need. In this case, if we're working with subcontractors, if you are a specialty builder, you might be working with a GC. You might have a GC change order number that you need to put in here in addition to your own change order. It might be your 8, their 47. That could happen. And as you go down into some of the additional detail here, you might have a different list than they do. And so your information is going to need to be customized to your company. And then we can continue on through and put in the price, continue on through and assign the resource. And now with Construction Online, there's also an option to draft the change order, which means I don't know what the price is yet, and I don't want the customer to approve until I do, so I'm just going to put this in a draft state so that nobody sees it but me and my team until we are actually ready to put it in front of the customer, at which point that status shifts over to pending approval, thereby allowing my customer to go in and say, yes, I would love to do this too.
Well, that's right. And that helps keep you on track because rather than waiting until you have everything together and you're ready for the client to see it, to enter it in the system, you can go ahead and do it immediately, right when it's been requested or right when you think about needing to do it. Go ahead and get it in there, get the change order started. It's also a great way, again, for teams to collaborate. I know that in many cases you may have teams in the field or a team member who happens to be on site with a client who requests something, but maybe that's not the team member that needs to cost out that change order, or maybe just additional information is going to be needed. That means that someone in the field can use a mobile app, create a change order quickly, label that as a draft status change order so it gets documented and not forgotten. But then we're not live for the client yet, so you still have the time and space that you need to be able to really accurately cost that out, enter in the information, get it ready for client eyes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, of course, all this information still gets documented. You'll find all the information available to you guys here. If you need to go back into and revisit it because perhaps we finally got that quote from the stone guys for the Spanish marble countertops, we can come into, click into this, add the costs, update the prices, whatever we need to do from here. All this information, again, becomes available, and you can turn it on at that point so that the customer can go in and work with it. But most importantly, again, all of it is documented, all of it is available, and no longer can the customer say, well, we didn't actually agree upon a price for that, so the price is nothing. No. No. In this case, all of it's documented, locked in, and approved when they do it. And until they say, yes, thumbs up, let's move forward, we're not committing to anything.
That's right. And from the client perspective, it's such a great tool too, because your customers would have these available in the portal. So if you choose to use Client Link with your customers, they will be able to go in and not only approve change orders, they'll be able to sign their change order. So it does go ahead and prompt them for a digital signature. And then beyond that, they're able to see a nice summary view that will show them, kind of exactly the impact of all the approved changes, in total. So they can see, here's where we started. I've approved 5 change orders for a total of, however much money, and really see what that's doing in terms of the contract price and schedule for their project. So they have a beautiful summary available to them as well.
Absolutely. And a lot of this information can be made available to them through the portal. The information and the detail can be made available to them through the financial reports as well. I think both work very well kind of in tandem in this case to provide the customer a great overall experience. Again, if you're communicating all this information in real time, they've got a comfort of knowing that you guys are looking out for their best interests as well, helping them stay within budgets or guidelines or whatever it may be, and allowing them to make better, more informed decisions about what we need to do today, or maybe the next time you guys stop by to visit for like a warranty checkup a year or two later, we can start talking about redoing certain areas that we passed on in the beginning. Now, along those lines too, there's a couple of kind of key points to this for the QuickBooks integration that I want to touch on just briefly as we get through this. We're starting to come up to the end of time, not the end of time, but the end of our allotted time for the webinar today, or a little past. So some quick points about the QuickBooks integration as we kind of dive into this. First of all, most of the accounting integration options have now been collected in Construction Online 2019 into one convenient location here under the accounting integration. Now, with the accounting integration section, you can actually go through and define how you want to connect to QuickBooks up at the top. Now, these options, a lot of these options are going to guide that communication between Construction Online Estimates and QuickBooks Online, or if you guys are a desktop QuickBooks user, we have another tool referred to that we've called Socket. I've got it pulled up over here, which has some similar options here for defining your initial setup and then pushing some of the details through. The idea here is the Construction Online platform is unique in that it gives you the opportunity or the power to define how you want the integration to happen. A lot of other project management systems give you air quotes here, I guess, I don't know, you guys can't see that, but it's quote unquote QuickBooks integration by passing just a single expense over for the whole job, or sometimes they don't even pull the information back, or maybe it's just an export that you have to like manipulate and then import. Or that's no good. I'm not interested. You won't have people like William Murphy writing in articles about how powerful this is, because that is counterproductive in pretty much everything. For ours, on the other hand, you can actually go into and define how much information you want the items to tie into, both in the items list itself, using things like parent items or selection parents, or for the chart of accounts, so that you can define how that profit and loss report is going to look for you guys that you're pulling out of QuickBooks, the all-important P&L report that everybody references. So you've got all that information here. Some of the newer features, though, that you guys might not have caught yet show up here under the calculation methods, where you can actually set it up so that not only are we keeping track of the QuickBooks integration, the QuickBooks actuals or the QuickBooks invoiced amounts, but you can start to add in some of the manual actuals at the same time. So now what you're looking at is a remaining balance where the bookkeeper might pay the bills once a week or every couple of weeks perhaps, but you've got ongoing costs that you're accruing in that time. This is a great way for you to just make a quick note in the manual actual column and see the running total until they re-import. And then you can clear out your actuals and then see an updated number again. Or maybe you live by what shows up in QuickBooks, in which case we use the top option. Or maybe you don't use QuickBooks at all, in which case we use the middle option. Again, you have plenty of flexibility or options to define how this information shows up. And then for change orders, you even have options to automate it. Now, I love these options because sometimes when a customer does decide to move forward with a change order, you don't catch it right away. You might not see that they've approved it, or maybe that email came in when you guys received 40 or 50 other emails at the same time and you didn't see it. This now allows you to automatically push that information over to QuickBooks the second they hit approve on that change order, which saves you that much more because you don't have to go back in and review this information. It's already there. And bookkeepers don't have to go back in and figure out if it's been approved or not because it's already there.
Yeah, that's right. So when it's approved, it's automatically going to QuickBooks for the bookkeeper, and there's really no question about it. Now, of course, you can see here that you could choose to turn off some of that automation, but most people keep it on just because, I mean, why not? It's so convenient. It's so powerful. The client has already given the approval. Now we need to make sure that we get paid for this. You know, getting the approval is half of it, but really collecting payment is another half. One of the things that this will do, whether you're sending those change orders to QuickBooks manually or having the system automate that for you, is if we go back and take a look at one of our change orders that we have in the system, we've also added in detailed timelines for those change orders. So if you're doing something like this that is a little bit more automated, You'll also notice that for each of those change orders, as we look at the individual options down there, now we have a nice detailed timeline where we can see exactly when we created it, exactly when it was approved, and then you can also see that, okay, now it's been sent to QuickBooks, an invoice is created, and as we record things like payments, those are going to show up here as well.
Yeah, and to touch on one of the questions that actually came through in regards to change orders, we're also locking the change order as soon as it's approved, providing the date and the user that approved it. You can see this information up at the top, which does by itself make it legally binding in a lot of areas. We add to this the ability to request the signature line as well to further cement that need. Now, this also stands up to a lot of the legal scrutiny as well, because now if we go into and make a change that would affect any of the price tags on the job, it offers to reset the change order to re-request that approval as well. So in this case, you have the added comfort of knowing that the system does follow all of the required steps as you guys are going through this process, and you document all of it. You've got the time that it was approved, the user that approved it, the day they approved it. All of this information is here, and it is far, far more than just a simple check, yes or no. In this case, we lock it down and track all of the information for everybody involved in the process to make sure that you are covered should any questions arise regarding the process that was used to get here. Again, full history for all this information, both here and on the accounting integration section.
That's right.
Which, again, I always kind of come back to this one because I have the mouse and I'm driving. But as we do come back to this, we also have the history for all of the exchange, the information exchange between them here as well. This has been extremely beneficial for everybody using QuickBooks Online integration already, and will be for you as well, either through the online or with Socket on the desktop. You can pull some of this information as well. But it allows you to see a quick overview for a lot of the information that's included in this process. So we created an estimate in QuickBooks. All the information is here to show you what was included in that estimate. You can click on the link to take it to QuickBooks Online as well, so that you can actually see the estimate that was created. Same for any of the reports or anything like that as well. Again, we're focusing a lot on providing you with the information and the detail so that you know exactly what happened, exactly when it happened, and you have a full paper trail to show that the right people are doing the right things at the right time to support your business.
That's right. I mean, when you look at something like managing your job cost and getting to the end of that job, or hopefully monitoring that throughout your project with tools like Construction Online, part of it is, of course, keeping your eye on the number, but part of it also is knowing where that's coming from. You know, like to be able to understand, okay, when was the last time that I imported from QuickBooks, or what did I include here, or have I made a purchase order for that item? This history or activity log is going to put all that information right at your fingertips. So there's never really a question. You always have the budget information right there in your job costing mode on the estimate. You can always come back here and see exactly what was included with those imports and exports. We display for you some really great just date and time stamps right on the estimate, so you can see, okay, exactly when did I send this to QuickBooks, or when was the last time that we've imported those actuals, to really give you a phenomenal big picture view of the health of that job and kind of allow you to manage that and see exactly where all of that information is coming from.
Mm-hmm. And of course, once the job is finished and we step back into the estimate to do our project recap to make sure that we're identifying potential pitfalls on future projects and shoring up the areas in the estimate that need a little bit of additional attention. Maybe we're still using pricing for 5 or 6 years ago when lumber prices were a little lower, or I worked with one company who, when they were first getting started with us, they were using steel prices from 1980, and they were building mostly steel structures. So that's a potential problem that we could then refine in this case. But again, as you go through, once you find and add that little bit of polish to the estimate, you can also take this and turn it into an estimate template as well, thereby allowing you to successfully recreate all of the brilliance that came from this project with those few small adjustments or evolutions on your estimate template, so that the next time you're better covered on this style of project as you guys work with these in the future. Now, I think that covers most of what we have on the docket for today.
I think so. Of course, we this wraps up our Construction Online 2019 webinar series. So this is the final webinar in this series, introducing you to all of the new tools available in Construction Online 2019. As always, here at UDA, we are kind of constantly looking for ways to provide you guys with more information, webinars, and workshops to attend. I know that we already have sessions planned to cover things like QuickBooks integration exclusively so that we can take a look at that, dive into some additional detail there. We'll put together some additional sessions for you guys, so please always stay on the lookout for sort of the latest updates on the webinar and workshop front from us. We want these to be tools that are available for you guys. I think the only other thing that would be great for us to touch on before we wrap up today's session, come to that final conclusion, would be to kind of look just quickly at the job costing dashboard. We've talked a little bit about how we can import or manually enter those actuals, but as we kind of jump into the actual job costing view on the estimate, that's where many of those columns by default will be exposed so that we can see, okay, the change order cost, how much, if we link that to an item on the estimate, how has that impacted that line, what actuals have been entered for the job here. So this is where you can really view all of this information on your estimate sheet. And if we go back to our dashboard view, you'll also have a great dashboard similar to what we saw in the very beginning here in our company overview, but this time drilled in for this estimate only. So rather than looking at this on a big picture basis for your company, kind of job by job, this drills in a little bit further, looks at this individual job, and then breaks each of those down by the categories that you've set up in your estimate so that you can quickly see, where do I stand in terms of using up the budget for that individual category.
And as it turns out, I haven't made a whole lot of progress yet on this one. But again,
looks like you haven't.
Yeah, and as we're going through and adding in these costs, spending in various different areas, or shift over to the invoicing view so that we can see how much money we're collecting on these various different areas. Again, the dashboard gives you that quick glance. It's almost like we're trying to track our progress on this so that when we do decide to step into progress invoicing, we know what numbers have to be there for each of these sections and can get those percentages correct. So again, as you guys are taking a look through these, we have plenty of these dashboard tools that provide you that additional insight without having to pull out the calculator, without having to try to scroll through this massive spreadsheet of numbers to find the specifics. We provide all of that great insight right here at the top, at the forefront of your estimate. Just take a look here under the estimate summary, and you'll be able to see all of that additional information as well, scrolling across to get that additional depth or detail here.
You also have a similar view for your invoicing. So if you are looking at, kind of going into some of the invoicing there, there's a view set up for you there, so that we can see, again, on a category by category basis, how much, in terms of really tracking amounts that we've invoiced or payments that we've received, what percentage of that is done for this project.
And again, speaking of the insight, looking at this, I'm sure most of you can look at this and assume that I'm building with the customer money in this case, which that would be my plan, of course. But apparently I skipped something, and I probably wouldn't have caught this unless we had come to this view. Granted, it's only $1,500, but that's a lot of cups of coffee. So this allows me to quickly catch that, at which point I can make sure to include that additional $1,500 on the next invoice to the customer, which I'm going to go put together as soon as we're done with this webinar.
All right.
So again, plenty of these insights that you guys will get just by clicking through and taking a look at the new views in the Construction Online 2019 interface. And for those of you who are interested in having access to it, make sure that you guys reach out to us. You can always give us a call at 1-800-700-8321, or send us an email, in this case to info or support at uda1.com. Or if you guys are not current subscribers and you're interested in becoming a subscriber, again, my name is Ian Schaefer. Give me a call. I'm happy to talk. Or more importantly, just call us at the same number or email us, and we'd be happy to have that discussion and find the best fit for you right here from UDA. So along those lines, I do think that covers about as much time as we have for today. There's a few outstanding questions that we will probably reach out to and touch base with you guys on some of those additional questions that we haven't had the chance to get into and answer. Don't forget too that we have recorded this today, so we will be making it available on YouTube as soon as it's produced. So take a look for it there as well. We send out a link to everybody who was able to attend today or sign up for the webinar. For everything else though, don't forget, you can reach out to us, give us a call, or send us an email. For now though, everyone, I think it's time to let you go, finish up for the rest of your day. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk to you guys in person here in about a week and a half. If you have the chance, join us at the International Builder Show. We are going to be right in the middle of everything. So come by and join us. Take a look at all of the different tools that we offer there. We're also going to have some partners there with us at the International Builder Show, like Kevin Rowe from iPlan Tables, who's going to have a large setup with a really, really interesting touchscreen. It almost looks like a drafting table, except again, it's a computer. It's a just massive touch screen. So come take a look. There's some really interesting things that we're going to be doing at the International Builder Show, and hopefully we'll have a chance to see you guys there. Until then, once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Ian Schaefer. I'm one of the Senior Product Specialists. Joining me today, of course, was Holly Gibson, our Head of Sales and Chief Guru here at UDA. And Sydney Dorsey as well. Thank you so much for fielding all those questions. Can't wait to take a look through all the rest of them that you were able to take care of already. And for everything else, everyone, thank you as well for joining us, not only for this, but for everything that you guys provide, and for everything that you do for us, and for everything that you do for all of your clients and everything else. Now, again, this is going to be a wrap for us today. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk again soon, but until then, everyone, have a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend, and take care.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.